We all have these little mental shortcuts. They're called cognitive biases. And honestly, they're essential for helping our brains navigate a super complicated world. But here's a wild thought. What if those shortcuts aren't universal? What if they're actually personalized and shaped by the things we care about most?
To see what I mean, just think about the last big project you worked on. When your part went great, it was probably easy to think, yeah, I nailed that, right? But when something went sideways, was your first instinct maybe to think, the circumstances were impossible? Or, well, so-and-so really dropped the ball. If that sounds familiar, don't worry. That's not just you. It's a classic feature of how our brains are wired.
And this right here lays it all out, clear as day. We have this natural tendency to credit our successes to who we are. I'm skilled, I worked hard. But for failures, we look outward. It was bad luck, a tough assignment, other people. This little mental glitch has a name, the self-serving bias. And yeah, it's a fantastic way to protect our ego.
Okay, so for the longest time, the thinking was that these biases are kind of like default programs running in every human brain. But what if they're not? What if they're more like apps that run way better on certain operating systems? What if the strength of a bias actually depends on the person? Well, the secret might just be in our personal values. And these aren't just fuzzy ideas about what's right or wrong. The psychologist Shalom Schwartz defined them as these deep, stable, motivational goals that pretty much guide everything we do. You can almost think of them as your internal compass, always pointing you toward what you believe is truly important. And this is where it gets really cool. A brand new study from 2024 suggests something profound. Our values don't just guide our choices. They literally shape our perception of reality. They act like a filter or a lens that can actually amplify certain biases, specifically the ones that help us live out our core values. So what does that actually look like? Let's dive into the first case study from the research. It connects that value of achievement with the very same self-serving bias we were just talking about.
So just as a quick refresher, the self-serving bias is that classic move of taking all the credit for our wins and blaming the outside world for our losses. It's a very human, very common way we keep feeling good about ourselves.
Okay, so here's where it all clicks. If your core value is achievement, meaning you are driven to succeed and prove you're competent, then the self-serving bias isn't some random bug in your thinking. No way. It becomes an incredibly useful psychological tool. It helps you protect that identity you've built as a successful, capable person. And the data from the study is just crystal clear on this. They found a direct link. Look at this chart. People who put a high value on achievement showed a self-serving bias that was more than twice as strong as those who didn't care as much about it. So, the more you value success, the harder your brain works to make sure you always feel successful. But this isn't just some one-off thing about achievement. The researchers found the same pattern with other values and biases too. So let's look at their second case study, which links the value of benevolence to something called the halo effect. I guarantee you've seen the halo effect in action. It's that thing that happens when you learn one good thing about somebody. Let's say they seem really warm, and suddenly that one trait creates this positive halo. Before you know it, you're assuming they're also generous and funny and just an all-around great person. So here's the proposed connection from the study. If you have a high benevolence value, meaning you're really motivated by caring for other people, then the trait of warmth becomes a massive signal for you. A warm person seems like someone you can trust, someone who will help you out, all the things that line up perfectly with that benevolent worldview. And once again, the data is pretty stunning. This chart shows that people who scored high on benevolence were way more susceptible to the halo effect of warmth. Just describing a stranger as warm versus cold had a massively bigger impact on their overall judgment. Their values were literally changing how much a single word mattered. So, what's the big picture here? We've looked at two totally different examples, but they point to the same conclusion. It's all about motivation. Our biases aren't just random errors. They seem to be systematically tied to what drives us. The researchers themselves just put it perfectly. This quote really gets to the core of it all. Our brain's shortcuts are most likely to pop up when they serve our deep, long-term motivations. In other words, when they serve our values. So the big takeaway here is actually kind of mind-blowing. Our values aren't just some nice list of principles we try to live by. They are active, powerful filters that are constantly bending our reality. They don't just tell us what to aim for. They influence what we even see in the first place.
And this leads us to a really practical and maybe slightly uncomfortable question. If our own values create these powerful filters, then what are our personal blind spots? This research is more than just interesting. It's a tool for some serious self-awareness.
So how can you actually do this? Well, first, just take a minute to really think about your core values. Is it achievement, benevolence, maybe security or tradition? Then, second, ask yourself, how might that value be filtering how I see the world? If you value loyalty above all else, for example, are you maybe too quick to judge people? And third, and this is the tough one, actively go look for information that challenges your gut reaction. It's about consciously trying to peek around your own filter. And that really leaves us with one last thing to chew on. This research isn't saying our values are bad or wrong. It's just saying they have this powerful and often totally invisible effect on our judgment. So the real question isn't if your perception is biased, it's how it's biased. If your deepest values are bending your reality, what are you not seeing?